Well, this afternoon was another spat over tariffs, both Canada and the United States making threats against each other to try and figure out what exactly is going to happen tomorrow. Loretta Redicroft with the details.
Premier Doug Ford spoke to reporters this afternoon. He just had a phone call with President Donald Trump's Commerce Secretary, Howard Lutnick.
And Secretary Lutnick has sent out an olive branch.
Ford will head to Washington this week to meet with Lutnick, along with Federal Finance Minister Dominic LeBlanc, discussing not just tariffs, but the entire U.S.-Canada-Mexico trade deal. Given that, Ford says he's paused the 25% electricity surcharge.
With any negotiation that we have, there's a point that both parties are heated and the temperature needs to come down. And I thought this was the right decision. They understand how serious we are about the electricity and the tariffs.
Earlier in the day, on social media, Trump vowed planned steel and aluminum tariffs to Canada would double, not 25%, but 50%. Then, throughout the morning, Ford made a flurry of U.S. TV appearances, not backing down on increasing energy prices for U.S. customers.
What I recommend is on the electricity bill, put down this increase is a tariff from Trump. It's a Trump tariff, which is basically a Trump tax.
Trump clearly listening, posting on social media they will pay a financial price so big it will be read about in history books for years to come. Later came that call between Ford and Lutnick. As for the steel and aluminum tariffs,
he has to bounce it off the president, but I'm pretty confident he will pull back. And I'm not speaking for them. I'm not speaking for the president.
And Ford says if those tariffs do kick in, so will the federal government's dollar-for-dollar tariff response, according to a conversation he had with Minister LeBlanc. Trump also talked about Ford this afternoon.
As you know, there's a very strong man in Canada who said he was going to charge a surcharge or a tariff on electricity coming into our country. He has called and he said he's not going to do that. Okay, he's not going to do that. And it would have been a very bad thing if he did, and he's not going to do that, so I respect that.
Late in the day, the U.S. confirmed that those tariffs on steel and aluminum, they are going ahead, but at the lower 25%, not the threatened 50%. Tomorrow, Ford will be meeting with Prime Minister-designate Mark Carney ahead of that trip to Washington. Loretta Redicroft, CBC News, Toronto.
U.S. President Donald Trump calling Ford the strong man in Canada, as you saw that clip in front of Teslas this afternoon. The premier has been front and center in the fight against American tariffs. Sean Jeffers now with a look at how that tough talk is playing out.
Well, it's called an olive branch.
Doug Ford on his plans to meet with the Trump administration about the escalating trade war between Canada and the U.S. That comes after Ford spent the week threatening to add a surcharge to electricity to the U.S. and ratcheting up his rhetoric against the U.S. president on American cable news stations. A move some experts say has gained traction. Ford, just a few hours earlier.
This is absolute chaos created by one person, and that's Donald Trump. President Trump did an unprovoked attack on our country, and that's unacceptable.
And that's been consistent with Ford's messages to people at home.
He needs to pay the price in the midterms. If I got to go down there and knock on the doors myself, I will.
That increasingly sharp language against the president broke through today.
And it was a retaliatory statement due to the escalation of rhetoric that we've seen out of Ontario, Canada. The president saw the premier, Doug Ford, make an egregious and insulting comment threatening to shut down electricity for the American people.
Conservative strategist Shakir Chambers says Ford's media blitz has worked and has the added benefit of being popular at home.
And I would say not only Ontarians, but I have friends in Alberta, I have friends in BC. They see this and they're, regardless of their political stripe, they're applauding how aggressive Ford is in dealing with the White House right now.
Liberal strategist Charles Byrd says Ford can go further than federal ministers who are heading up talks with Trump. And his appearances on U.S. cable networks appear to have landed.
If this becomes uncomfortable politically for the Americans to be doing, and as we get closer to the midterms at the end of next year, which is admittedly a long time from now, that is significant.
But McMaster University professor Peter Grafe says he's been skeptical of Ford's escalating rhetoric on Trump.
Mr. Ford is maybe late in discovering some features of Mr. Trump's personality or how he engages situations, but the very material impacts of Mr. Trump's decisions mean that, Mr. Ford's been shaken out of thinking like a partisan and having to think much more like an Ontarian.
While Ford says he's accepted the olive branch from the Trump administration and called off the electricity surcharges for now, it's not clear if he'll call off his media blitz south of the border or his criticisms of Donald Trump. Sean Jeffords, CBC News, Toronto.
Joining us now is Colette Kennedy. Colette, a beautiful day out there, a little windy for folks who, have some hair to worry about, but not too bad. What do we got in the forecast there?
Well, you don't want it blowing the beard around either, there, Chris, right? Well, I'll tell you what has been going on. The windy conditions are due to a cold front passing through. So sure, a beautiful day. I mean, just after lunch, the temperature was up there at 15 degrees, but that cold front has kicked those winds up, changed the direction, and ushering some of the cooler air in. It won't be as cold as this, but you can see some of those numbers. And so we're down to 7 degrees now from that 15 that we were at, and we're dropping to -2 overnight tonight. Don't worry about it. We'll go back to at least 7 degrees tomorrow for the high, Chris.
I like that. We'll talk again soon, Colette.
Sounds good.
University of Windsor is trying to find a way to deal with a $30 million hole in its budget. Senior leadership has announced dozens of job cuts. On the unionized side, the university is cutting more than 40 office and clerical jobs, while centralizing services will lead to another 27 job cuts. There have also been major changes in non-unionized roles, including 8 job cuts and wide-ranging salary restructuring. Today, students said that they're worried it's going to have an impact on their education. The CBC's Dawson Chen reports.
Save our staff! Save our staff! No more cuts! No more cuts!
The University of Windsor is dealing with a $30 million operating budget shortfall, and these students feel their post-secondary education is suffering because of it. This on-campus march was meant to show student dissatisfaction with rampant staffing cuts, according to protest organizer and communications student Sean O'Neill.
The lack of secretaries, lack of support staff, lack of faculty, we can't run the way that we have been, and if all these things are going to be cut down and continue to be cut down, we're going to be stuck. Our students are not feeling that our voices are being heard and that our opinions are being taken into consideration.
The demonstration of around 200 students was joined by CUPE Local 1393 members. Kristen Siapas, the local's president, says her communications coordinator position is among the many jobs that will be directly impacted by the cuts.
Well, yes, I was just notified that my position is being eliminated. It's actually my second elimination notice in the last 12 months. We understand that the university is trying to meet their budget shortfall by centralizing some of their services, but ultimately the impact is going to be on the students. Our members here at CUPE 1393 support the campus community in a lot of different ways. We are the communicators, we're the fundraisers, we're the IT department, we're the technicians and the trades, we run labs. We provide support for every unit on this campus.
In a statement about the protest, administration says the university is committed to freedom of expression and peaceful assembly. But the University of Windsor added that it isn't the only institution navigating financial challenges and making difficult decisions to ensure long-term sustainability. Last week, University President Robert Gordon issued a letter to faculty and staff warning of cost-saving initiatives, efficiency improvements, and streamlining of services affecting the employment of many. Still, administration says academic excellence and the student experience will continue to be prioritized. That's something Sean O'Neill has difficulty believing.
There's been no direct communications with students about how these changes will affect us, and no consideration taken, no opinions been surveyed, nothing like that. So it's hard to see how they're taking students into consideration. Very clearly they're going to affect us.
O'Neill says more student action is being planned. Dawson Chen, CBC News, Windsor.
We're here at a community center in Windsor where people are lining up to refill or get for the first time potassium iodine pills. These are special pills meant to protect against radiation and protect the thyroid from thyroid cancer. Now, there are 2 primary zones in which Windsor residents could be living close to a nuclear reactor, one within 16 kilometers from the Fermi 2 power plant, and the second within 80 kilometers from the Fermi 2 power plant. We understand that it's a little bit of an odd situation for some people watching, so we wanted to talk to some people in line and see what they had to say.
I think it's okay. So the Health Unit puts on really great initiatives, and it's good to be safe. I know there's a lot of safety measures already with our nuclear power plants, and they are necessary to fuel our life. So it's just nice that they are offering it for free. So, yeah.
Any thoughts from you?
I feel the same way. Like I feel like, you know, we want to be safe and have the option for like the pills if ever something does go wrong. And there's always like risks involved with like any like kind of power source, right? So we just want to be prepared, that's all.
And Kim, what made you decide to line up today?
Because of the way the world's going, a real threat. I just want to protect my family.
I guess I'm a little concerned that our leader has been poking the bear, and it's better to be safe than sorry.
And did you have the pill kit previous to this?
I did. Stored away in a SHTF, shit hits the fan kind of kit. And anyway, yeah, I thought maybe a few more in another place would be a good idea.
Well, these are actually good, she said, until, actually, I think she said for 9 years. So
Okay.
there's a good long stretch on these.
Okay, thank you very much, Melissa. Anything else you want to add?
Just elbows up.
Okay.
Finally, some nice weather has arrived after what seemed like a very long stretch of cold there. Some big winter weather this year. Our video producer, Mike Evans, took to the streets to see what people were up to on one of the first nice days of the year.
Yesterday was a little bit better, but today it's looking good.
How long you been rollerblading for?
Almost a year. That's it. I don't do tricks. I just rollerblade for fun.
What kind of music do you listen to while you're blading?
I like to listen to jazz, mostly 70s. That's all. I'm into like old school music.
Niang, it's a beautiful day out here. You're in t-shirts, you're shooting hoops. What's it feel like to be outside enjoying the weather?
It feels nice. I'm taking the basketball course this semester.
Okay, well, what do you say you shoot another basket for us? Wow! It's such a nice day out. Is that why you wanted to come and vacuum and wash your car here?
Yeah, exactly. So after winter, you know, the weather is so nice, like a sunny day. So it's like all enjoying with my buddies and clean my car and wash everything.
Did you find anything interesting while you were vacuuming out your car? Did you find any loose change or anything?
No, so the thing is that I just lost my driving license. I'm looking for it, but didn't find that one.
Jack Daniel's been pulled off the shelves across Ontario. And American whiskey was one of the first casualties of this trade war with the United States. But country singer Parker Ouellette was ready to split ways with JD before the tariff talks. Here's the Windsor singer on his latest single, Jack Daniel's Ain't a Friend of Mine.
I like to say that some songs are based on a true story. This one is based on many. It's just about going out on a Friday night and regretting it in the morning.
And if I'm honest with myself, I probably could have done without that last little bottle of wine. And Jack Daniels is a no good son of a and he's sure no friend of mine.
But you know what? Right now, Jack Daniels is not a friend of mine because she's being removed from Ontario shelves. And me and him need a breather. We need some time apart. I'm gonna go start hanging out with my other buddies, JP Weisers. That tale of, you know, rekindling friendship is relevant right now because we will get through this, Jack and I, and Jack will be back on Ontario shelves. We will be friends again. It's gonna take work, you know. I never let Jack off easy. This song was written at least over a year ago, and it was just written in the spirit of harmless degeneracy, I would say. And it just happened to come out the week that the tariffs went on for real. People are calling this the Canadian blowing in the wind. It's a protest song now. I'm the only one calling it that. I would be grateful for the opportunity to provide relief to people through this absolute joke of a song in these times that are giving people worry. It's just a culmination of 4 years of writing and editing and revising and revisiting and walking away from and walking back to. And so I'm pretty excited for this. And I hope everybody else can find something to enjoy about it as much as I have enjoyed this process.
Tough Times always makes a bit of fun art. Beautiful day out there. We'll be back with a deeper look at the tariff situation next. Welcome back. It's been 5 years since the World Health Organization declared COVID-19 a global pandemic. Now, that declaration kicked off a bunch of policies that transformed the way Canadians live for years. It followed months of rapid spread of the virus, which forced mass lockdowns in China and Italy, the declaration triggering the shutdown of schools, of offices, those travel limits, the bans on social gatherings, the closing of that border. Public health officials became household names as Canadians sought to keep up with the latest advice with each new wave. The global COVID-19 health emergency was lifted in May 2023. That's following that downward trend of the virus for more than a year. Well, the U.S. says it's resuming military aid and intelligence sharing with Ukraine immediately. This about-face coming after talks between U.S. and Ukrainian officials in Saudi Arabia aimed at ending Russia's war against Ukraine. Now, Kiev also said it was open to a U.S. ceasefire proposal subject to approval from the Kremlin. But these developments are happening hours after Ukraine launched its biggest attack ever on Moscow since hostilities began 3 years ago. Hundreds of drones targeted 10 Russian regions, sparking fires, shutting down airports, diverting flights. Russia says it shot down over 300 units. The attacks come after the Trump administration suspended that military aid and intelligence to force Ukraine to negotiate a ceasefire. Meanwhile, Ukrainian officials say Russia launched more than 125 drones and a ballistic missile into the country. Well, back here in Canada, it may feel like spring for most of the eastern part of the country, but you got to keep those winter jackets around. Cold weather is set to return later this week. CBC's Joanna Wagstaff explains what's behind that cold snap.
Very cold air is returning to parts of the northern hemisphere. You've probably seen the headlines. Is it a polar vortex collapse? Is it not? Does it matter? It will get cold for parts of eastern Canada and northern Europe as we head into the middle of March. But where's the cold coming from? The polar vortex is the air that circulates over the north and south poles. It's always there, but it exists pretty high up in the sky, 15 to 50 kilometers in the layer we call the stratosphere. It's the layer above the troposphere where most of our weather is at. Sometimes this vortex gets knocked down or stretched to lower latitudes, especially during something called a stratospheric warming event. That's a super ominous and scientific way to say rapid warming in that upper layer. In fact, sometimes this rapid warming is so disruptive, it reverses the normal counterclockwise direction of the vortex and winds start blowing clockwise. This only happens once every couple of years. When we get this reversal of winds up high, sometimes it can act like a barricade for the wind at lower levels. You get sort of crashing waves happening vertically and horizontally in the atmosphere. So yes, sometimes these big warming events high in the Arctic can lead to deep freeze outbreaks for Canada and Europe. And it goes the other way too. Sometimes big warming events at the surface can translate all the way up into the stratosphere, but not always. Sometimes the lower level Arctic air spills down on its own without this crazy warming event needed, or sometimes the crazy warming event happens, but our jet stream does its own thing anyway. The layers do interact, but as you've probably guessed by now, it gets very complicated. And that's why there's always a bit of hesitation from scientists, myself included, when we hear the term polar vortex outbreak in connection to our weather. So what's the case right now? Well, there are some signs in the forecast models that we may see a massive warming event for the polar vortex, and the winds may even reverse, but it's not for sure. And even then, we don't know for sure what that will mean for the lower levels of our atmosphere, aka our weather. But we do know that this is an area of research scientists are really interested in right now, especially when it comes to climate change and how the different layers of our atmosphere are responding to all this extra heat.
Keep those learning caps on. We got one simple trick on fighting extreme heat. Take a look. Okay, it's maybe not too simple. You paint your roof white and it reflects light and heat back to the sky. A study spanning several countries figured this out. This tin roof shantytown in India, heat hits 46 degrees, but they're gonna have indoor temperatures monitored as well as residents' health to see if this really helps. Heat waves that happens once every 10 years before the Industrial Revolution, they're now 3 times as likely. Well, if you got a story you want us to cover, give us a shout. 519-984-2051 is the text. Email us, windsor@cbc. We welcome back Colette Kennedy. I was just going to make a joke about it being sunscreen season, and now I see the bright glow behind you there. Are we entering it or what?
Yes, right? You've got it. Well, we're just taking a look here. Let's start off with the daylight hours because we had that change on the weekend, right? The lost hour, so to speak. So sunrise tomorrow, 7:48 a.m., but the sunset tomorrow, 7:35. So looking at the hours of daylight, yes, there it is. Not quite 12 hours, but getting closer to that as the daylight hours are getting longer and longer. Current temperatures, of course, those have been sliding after that high of 15 degrees earlier. With that cold front having gone through and the winds changing direction, it's been ushering in that cooler air behind it. So 6 degrees, 5 for Chatham-Kent, but you can see some of those numbers there closer to freezing or even at freezing for Goderich. And tonight we're actually going to slip just below the freezing mark. So yeah, we have to go on the other side of things as things will be cooling down. The sustained winds still there at about 35 kilometers an hour. Looking at some wind gusts too that are still strong behind that front too, 45 to close to 50 kilometers an hour. And through tonight into tomorrow, we're still going to have some of those to contend with, giving us a bit of a wind chill. They'll back off at times and then kind of be starting to ramp up again. But essentially, we have this front passing through. We have a bit of a cool down that's coming. There wasn't much moisture. A little bit of rain showers into eastern Ontario, really just not much with this front. Excuse me. Some cloud cover, though, we did have to deal with that, and that's kind of what's going to be happening as we move forward in time as the next system is approaching. It's going to take us back in the other direction and warming things up, but it's also going to be bringing some cloud cover in. So quite a bit of cloud cover back into the picture tomorrow through most of the day. We'll get some clearing then later in the day, so some sunny breaks are becoming more variable, and then a nicer setup with that milder air that's going to be coming in on Thursday. So we get some sunshine coming back at us. Those overnight temperatures, though, at least -1. I think we're actually going to slide to -2. So that is my forecast low for tonight. And with the winds, just keeping in mind, it's going to feel more like about -7 or so. So that's your wind chill value early tomorrow. And then your daytime high into the afternoon hours, still not bad, going up to 7 degrees, -2 Wednesday night. And then a lot of sunshine there into Thursday, 12 degrees for the daytime high. Yes, looking at potentially flirting with 20 degrees for that high on Friday, but as we go into the weekend, rain is on the way. It may be mild, but we do have rain showers in the forecast.
Yeah, nothing to complain about. That nearly 12 hours of daylight is nice to have.
There you go.
Hey, Colette, everybody have a wonderful evening. More news, cbc.ca/Windsor.
Good night.